Welcome to Xena Warrior Podcast. My name is Vera, and I am joined, as always, by my two lovely co-hosts, Katie.
Hi.
And Livy.
Hi.
This week we are doing what we decided is beyond the hump of season 1, right? They're better episodes now.
I think that, there was a trying period where maybe the episodes were being a bit more experimental and kind of,
testing your patience a little
testing
bit.
your patience and testing, what things worked on Xena and what didn't. And I think Warrior Princess, which is one of the episodes we're going to be talking about today, is another tester episode, but it's one where it's a successful experiment.
That's right. Yeah. So we are doing 115 Warrior ... Princess and 116. What was that one called?
Mortal Beloved.
Mortal Beloved. That's right. Shall we begin?
How do you think we're supposed to say Warrior Princess?
I think like that.
Like that?
Yeah.
Or is it
with a little space.
Warrior Princess?
There is no question mark at the end. It's just Warrior Princess. Because it's not Warrior Princess.
Yeah.
Duh.
You don't want to confuse it with the Hercules introduction of Xena, also called Warrior Princess.
Yeah, there you go.
Not Warrior Princess.
There's no question marks, ever. So there should be an exclamation point.
I like that.
So Warrior Princess is, I thought, really fun episode.
Yes.
Very strong episode.
Yeah. I mean, whenever you have your main awesome kick-ass lady character playing a secondary character, I'm there. I'm in.
Well, this is the first Xena doppelganger episode.
Yeah.
There's only one Xena doppelganger in this one. Later there will be more.
And it will be even more amazing if you can believe it.
So this is the first episode, not that we haven't had funny stuff before, but this is the first time Xena has kind of gone full broad comedy, right?
I think so. Yeah, there's a lot of physical comedy in this episode. And just the stakes of it feel sort of lower than a typical Xena episode. Like, my favorite part is when, you're kind of playing out to a suspenseful commercial break with Xena about to play the harp. Oh no!
That's interesting that you mentioned the commercial breaks, because I honestly, for the first time in Mortal Beloved, was really feeling the cliffhanger commercial breaks. That was how you kind of used to build your acts. So the harp one was kind of a funny one. But also, not to get too deep into the episode first, let's just say this is Xena doing full Shakespeare comedy.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, mistaken identity in this kind of royal court setting immediately kind of brings to mind a lot of classical farce.
Yeah. And, people looking exactly like each other.
For absolutely no reason.
No reason whatsoever.
Well, that's how the episode starts. Xena arrives at this kingdom and immediately something is off because she sees guards and she's ready to fight them, but everyone just stands straight, bows to her, and is just slightly, acting a little odd. And she, at first, is really put off by it, but then she's kind of getting into it.
Yeah,
She's
she enjoys
sure,
it.
All right, yeah, let's do this.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that I was like, oh no, the warning bells. Xena is back to being obeyed by soldiers. This is, tempting her to her old ways.
I have a quote here that just says, "Your wish is my command."
Her lady-in-waiting servant comes up to her and throws the shawl around her shoulders and is really freaked out that she's wearing her armor because it's so revealing.
Oh boy.
And the lady's maid calls it her costume, which Xena seems very offended by, that anyone would call her armor a costume. She says, "What's wrong with my costume?" Thought that was a very interesting moment. We're immediately kind of stepping into this sort of, as you said, Shakespearean. It's theater now. Suddenly, Xena's true outfit is a costume.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that mean the audience is supposed to question it at this point? Ooh, this outfit that we've been following for 15 episodes, is it really just a costume?
Well, it definitely felt like a meta moment because I'm sure, the audience would have been reacting to just the skimpiness of Lucy Lawless's costume. We've been reacting to the shortness of her skirt.
Honestly, compared to the next episode costume, like, that one really puts things in perspective, I think.
But that's a bathing suit, yeah.
It's
supposed to be like that.
She wears it into a lake. It's a bathing suit.
I don't know. I think it's supposed to be the under part of this.
It's her bathing costume.
We've seen her undergarments.
But it's not those undergarments. It's like a different layer.
This is like her Thursday undies.
It's wash day.
She has different undergarments, but only one outfit. Okay.
Yeah.
But it definitely, to me, felt like almost a Winky moment, where it's like, we know that Xena's outfit is very short, but like for Xena, it's not a costume. It's the outfit she has chosen to wear. So I feel like it's making this point about like, she's not wearing this for other people's enjoyment. Like, it's not something she should be embarrassed by.
Right. And of course, in an episode where you're dealing with another character who looks exactly like Xena, costuming becomes part of the like performance of like your identity. So it's like a big deal later when they switch places and they have to change clothes.
Yeah.
It is a big thing. So
Xena's warrior's outfit becomes a costume that other people can wear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's true. It does go through evolutions in this season of many people putting on her costume.
That's true. Anybody can become Xena if they put on that armor.
Well, that's interesting because, I mean, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I loved when Gabrielle first sees Diana, dressed as Xena. It's not just like the look that Gabrielle is attached to, it's like the personality. She can sense that it's not the correct personality in there. So
because she's crying.
not yet, but yeah. Anyway, we'll talk about that for sure. After this costume conversation is when Xena sets a guy on fire, though.
Right.
Yeah, a random guy just jumps her in the middle of
this. Well, he's
this.
there, clearly trying to do some harm. Xena, of course, spots him, and while she was just drinking, like, some alcohol, I guess.
Yeah.
Just hanging out,
it's
waiting.
Just on a table.
Yeah, and so she sets him on fire, and he flies out the window. So just FYI, Xena just matter-of-factly can set a dude on fire.
He escapes the guards, even though he's on fire and just fell out a window.
This episode really deals a lot with Xena setting dudes on fire and them not dying, though. Like, they both kind of make it.
Second-degree burns, maybe.
All right.
So should we talk about the introduction of Princess Diana?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Or her father, the Burger King?
Yes. We will call him the Burger King because he's wearing a big hat.
And we know, we already explained what, you do when a funny hat is.
It's really big.
And it's clearly made out of plastic because later Diana cuts it with the chakram. If that were gold, it wouldn't get sliced.
No, the chakram, man.
You think the chakram can slice through
Oh,
gold?
yeah, anything.
It can do a lot.
The chakram could do anything.
Well, I'm positive that King's crown is made out of plastic.
Tangent. While you're mentioning things looking like plastic, I have to talk about how we watched these episodes differently than we usually watch them because we were in a different location on a different television. And Vera, what is it set to in terms of crazy modern TV,
so it's
nutty frame rates that we always turn off?
It's one of those TVs that has the upped frame rate.
Yes.
I'm not sure exactly the specific, like 60 frames.
I think it might even be more. It might be like 120.
Is it really?
I don't know.
It's
way too many frames.
Less than The Hobbit, but, more than regular TV. And
I thought The Hobbit was 48.
Yeah, I think it's 60 frames per second.
It's more than The Hobbit.
Yeah.
So you can try to imagine that.
Anyway, no. So here's the thing. I usually despise this stuff because when you put on, you're just watching regular TV nowadays or a movie, it makes everything look like a crazy old soap opera that's supposed to look. For me, it takes the, artistry out of how stuff is supposed to look. So I was a little skeptical of watching it this way, but for some reason, it made these first season episodes look really hot to me.
Yeah.
And it didn't look, I mentioned, you were talking about things looking plastic, but that's not, I don't think that it actually, I was worried about things looking like setty or cheaper or whatever, but I actually, it added something to it. It made it really pop. Everything looked really bright. Everything had a lot of depth. This first season on Netflix, it has a bit of a grainy quality to it. I think they were shooting on a different type of film in the first season too. So it made it look really like smooth and good. So I recommend, if you have the ability to do it, just check it out. It was kind of fun.
If you want to feel like Lucy Lawless is in your living room,
right in your living room,
do it.
I also think like that high definition technology always does well with like on location photography. So like, you know, those beautiful New Zealand landscapes look fantastic. Yeah, like the quality of the sunlight, the trees, you can see every individual leaf.
That's right.
It's real pretty.
Anyway, I don't want to watch all of it like this, but it was cool. What were we talking about though? Oh, the Burger King's hat.
Well, the Burger King immediately wants Xena to work for him, and she has this amazing reaction to that.
Right.
She says, "I'm not a hired sword at the disposal of those who can pay." And then he's like, what about those who need you?
She clearly has some class issues. She doesn't just go to every rich guy with a problem. That doesn't appeal to her as a way of being a hero.
But he goes, well, someone's trying to assassinate my daughter. Can you please help? And she's like, no.
Yeah, well, she's like, are you a bad king with like an annoying daughter? Because why should I help you? I think it's interesting that the way that Burger King convinces her is to talk about the abolishment of slavery. That's when he gets her attention. She's like, oh, you're a nice king. Yeah. She probably hasn't met many of those.
It is interesting, though, that it's not like every life doesn't matter to her. It's just like the ones she deems appropriate for her to help, which is fascinating in your hero.
Yeah. And I think she's very eager to help. You know, if she just meets like an ordinary villager who's like, help, someone's trying to like assassinate my daughter, she'll help without question. Yeah. But if you live in a castle, she's like, well, I don't know.
She did come.
Yeah.
She did come. So she was curious.
Well, Burger King is cousin of Sisyphus, so she already has dealt with this bitch. And so she maybe has already like preconceptions of this guy's like, oh, well, are you a little bitch too? You know? But Burger King is not. He's nice.
Burger King's really nice. He's a nice guy. He just, he has apparently a constitution that abolishes slavery, which immediately made me ask a lot of questions like, what is the political system in this town? It's like a constitutional monarchy.
Yeah, they didn't really get into that. Well, Diana's supposed to marry somebody from a different kingdom, and they were all gonna abolish the slavery, right?
For some reason, they have a rule, I guess in Diana's kingdom, that whoever marries her has to adopt the political practices of her kingdom.
Okay.
Yeah, so they have to abolish slavery too.
All right. So she's betrothed to this guy, Minius, I think.
Minius.
Yeah. But Diana hangs out with his younger brother a lot.
Apparently, Minius sent his younger brother as like an emissary for him.
They've never even met, right? It was the first time they were meeting in this like banquet.
Which to me felt again kind of Shakespearean comedy, that you have like the lovers who've never met, and just immediately you see the problems that are going to develop in this comic soap opera.
Well, let's talk about the comedy. It begins, of course, when Xena decides to take on this job and pretend to be Diana.
And we meet Diana, and we understand exactly what's so funny about this, which is, yes, she is just Lucy Lawless in a pink dress.
She's like the opposite of Xena, if you can think of an opposite.
She has a high voice.
She has a high voice. She's extremely girly.
Right.
She loves frilly things, loves brushing the hair, which was straight out of the Brady Bunch movies, you know, the 1,000 Strokes.
She's Marcia?
She's,
Marcia.
Exactly.
Was that in the Brady Bunch itself, or just part of the Brady Bunch movie?
The Brady Bunch, you know what, I don't remember.
Okay.
But it's definitely in the Brady Bunch movies.
Does that make Xena Jan?
No.
Everyone's like, how dare you?
I think that's Diana's first reaction to Xena is, you look just like me, except when I haven't brushed my hair.
Yeah, that's right.
What a burn. What a sick burn.
Xena's hair is perfect. What's wrong with her hair?
Not a thing. I liked it better than Diana's hair. Diana's hair was too done. I have a note here about the reaction of Diana to meeting Xena and Xena meeting Diana, which is that Diana looks really like excited, like she's like beaming to meet Xena, and Xena looks so annoyed. So I feel like this is almost like, you know, when the girly girl meets the like badass, she's like, I love this is great. When the badass meets the girly girl, she's like, oh god, must we?
What about when they switch outfits and there's like an instruction on how to be one another, kind of?
That's parent trapping, right? now? We're getting into Parent Trap territory.
Well, I was going to say it's a Prince and the Pauper.
Oh, yes.
That's a scene in there where they are instructing each other on how to stand and, like, how to behave. And, yeah, the Pauper has a lot more trouble being the prince than vice versa. So and poor Xena.
That's the apropos analogy, because one of them is royal. Okay. One of the girls in the Parent Trap is really rich and fancy, and the other one isn't.
I'm pretty sure the Parent Trap is a riff on Prince and the Pauper.
Exactly.
So it's all good.
But I thought it was so interesting that Xena, instructing her how to be Xena, she goes, stand up straight, put your shoulders back. Which makes me go, as a princess, what is Diana doing? Like, she's going around slouching? Like, is she hiding the fact that she's a princess, like, naturally?
I think it's,
body language?
There's different body language to being a warrior than to being a princess. Like, one has to sort of be demure.
But typically a princess, you would think, would be somebody who has...
She has good posture.
Yeah, really good posture. Because that's part of, like, femininity, you know? So it's just
I think you're hitting on something. Like, to me, this whole episode is very much about femininity, and sort of the princess is embodying this very sort of classical, traditional sense of being female with, like, a pretty pink dress and, you know, very shiny hair.
Perfect manners.
Perfect manners.
Which is all that Minius cares for. She has to be just, like, this impeccable female representative that
she makes men feel very special.
Yes, exactly.
And meanwhile, there's Xena, who, you know, it hasn't really been stated overtly in the show, but she is a very non-traditional picture of femininity. And yeah, you feel when she's kind of getting the princess to stand like her, it's kind of like stand like a man.
Yeah. And it was great.
Shoulders squared, legs apart. Yeah,
that's right. She didn't instruct her on how to sit awesomely, but, you know, maybe next time. Diana then is like, okay, here's your dress. You have to put it on. And Xena takes it and it's, like, backwards. So she doesn't even know how to put on the dress correctly.
Yeah, Diana, you know, tied little bows around.
Oh my God.
Like, it needed some color, okay?
But at least she knew which way was front. Xena's, I think, has a lot further to go.
And you know, her armor is, like, pretty intense to put on, so she figured it out. Well, she knows outfits, so it works.
Fashion's her specialty. Oh, I had one little note about Diana, which is there's this throwaway line about her mother being killed.
Oh my gosh, I think I missed that.
The king's just like, she hasn't been out of the palace since her mother was killed. I was like,
wow.
What?
Yeah.
It's never mentioned again.
Out of the actual palace itself, or, like, the confines? Like, she's never been outside?
She hasn't been outside the walls. She mentioned that she hasn't been outside.
I think
only twice.
Right,
only twice has she been outside the walls.
But since her mother was killed, so there's a whole story behind this princess's confinement and how protected she is from the world.
Yeah, she is kind of excited to get out there because she wants to meet the, quote, little people.
Gaps like the common people.
And this, again, is very like Prince and the Pauper, because that's exactly what the prince ends up doing, is going to hang out with the paupers, and that obviously is going to make him a better ruler in the long run, because he actually sees what the conditions are like for his subjects. And you immediately see that that's probably where this Diana storyline is going to go. She's going to find out what the real world is like.
Well, let's talk about the scene where she first ventures out. But this includes Gabrielle.
She's riding side saddle.
Yes, that was amazing. The first amazing kind of visualization of this is not Xena is an image of quote-unquote Xena on Argo, but riding side saddle.
And I love it because it's not really shouted out. It almost isn't a part of the script. Like, there's no dialogue about it. It's just this little detail where you see it, you're like, that looks wrong, and you realize why, and you laugh, and the story goes on.
So she's off to find Gabrielle, and this is the first Gab's appearance in the episode, where she's just hanging out by a tree, trying to do some writing in her scrolls, and not having a good time making up some rhymes.
I have it. The woe of hearts long dead pounds soundly in my head, for a warrior princess lives in a world of broken bibs, mibs, sieves. She can work with that.
That line literally doesn't even make sense, like, before the stupid rhyme. Like, what is she trying to describe?
I sort of love one of the running things of Gabrielle being a writer and a bard is that obviously she is very good at it, but there is kind of a running gag that she's kind of maybe not very good at it, which is really cute.
I like to think we're always like witness to like her first draft, and like by the third, it's amazing. You would just weep.
Exactly.
But some gross guy comes up to her and is really threatening and disgusting at her,
trying to rob her.
Yeah, he's trying to rob her, and she's like getting worried, but in the corner of her eye, she sees that Xena's coming up, so it's fine.
Everything's cool.
It's all good. You better watch out, guy, because my friend is coming. And, it's not really Xena. And it's the most awkward kind of confrontation ever. How would you describe Diana in this moment?
She saunters up and begins slapping the guy with her weak wrists. She's just like, pew, 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 pew.
And then I would describe her as she did the Phoebe run.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, for sure.
You're right.
She just like got freaked out by the situation and ran off like Phoebe from Friends. And at this moment, Gabrielle kind of like took the guy down with her staff. So
yeah.
She managed the situation, but it was like awkward as fuck.
It's probably the first time Gabrielle has had to sort of defend Xena in a confrontation.
That's true.
So now her reaction to this was really interesting. She thought it was test day.
This is my favorite part of the episode.
Diana is instructed to bring Gabrielle a letter explaining the situation. And Gabrielle straight up reads this explanation and does not believe it.
Because it's ridiculous. I mean, why would you believe it? And Gabrielle is now, like, really convinced that it's test day. She continues talking about how she's being tested. So the implication here, to me, in this scene, is that this is not the first test day. Yeah. Obviously, it's not, because it's Diana. But Xena has thus tested her before in weird ways.
I want to see those episodes so badly.
Do you think a lot of it has to do with that watermelon and the wig trick?
Maybe. Oh my God, it must. That is the explanation for watermelon in a wig.
Part of all those fest days.
Oh my God.
Well, Gabrielle, as we previously mentioned, only kind of starts believing this when Diana or Xena bursts into tears in front of her. So I thought that was really interesting that only when she cries does she go, whoa, maybe this is true.
That's how insane it is to see Xena cry for Gabrielle at this point in the story. Like any show of emotion, she's like, that can't be Xena.
So the other comedy moment that we sort of skirted over was Xena meeting Philemon, the brother of Minius.
Who previously Diana has described to Xena as having like piercing blue eyes and flaxen hair, just something ludicrous. And then you meet the guy, and he's such a schmo.
He's sweet. With the floppy hair. It's really good. I mean, clearly Diana loves this guy, and he, for sure, is very protective of Diana. He brings her flowers. Xena thinks he's an assassin and takes him out, and it's really hilarious.
She doesn't only take him out, she takes out the flower bouquet.
Yeah. I love it. She's like, something's in here, and just like rips it apart. It's so great. But yeah, they have a really funny, like, comedic confrontation with some assassin ninjas in the courtyard where she has to make it seem like he's fighting them off, but she's helping in the background.
And I thought the visual of Xena, kicking these guys with her bare legs and her, like, pink dress that kind of, like, flutters as she fights was, just, like, kind of a really beautiful visual while also being really silly. Like, especially silly. I think we've just gotten used to kind of what it looks like when Xena's in her regular costume, doing, like, the, multiple kicks round table thing. Seeing her in a dress doing it kind of made that image, like, fresh and ridiculous again.
And every time they come back to her, she's like, oh, I'm just waiting. Nothing's happening.
Yeah. Which, again, I feel like that kind of defines this episode as the first comedy. Like, it's using even the fight scenes to kind of just be really silly and kind of commenting on, the way a regular Xena episode would go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the ninjas take off because they beat him up, and the last guy, ADR, screams, hey, fellas, wait for me.
Because, she keeps dunking them in this fountain. I think, 4 people end up in the fountain over the course of this episode. It's like that fountain gets so much play. And the final guy is, in the fountain for, a full minute after the fight is over. And you see him in the background of a shot, climbing out and slinking away.
I thought it was interesting, though, that you can tell, these are kind of ways that she uses to dispose of bad guys without actually doing any murders. This was a murderless episode.
That's how you know it's a comedy.
Yeah, it's a comedy one.
Interesting.
And
the rules of comedy, end with a wedding, don't kill anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Not even like the bad guy, who I guess we should bring up. His name is Glaus. Is that a bad guy name?
How could anyone think that this guy is evil? He wears a weird hat and is named Glaus.
He also looks 100% like Charles Dance. Guys,
I think Vera just sees Charles Dance everywhere.
I do. I have this tendency. Xena described him as looking like a used chariot salesman, which I thought was fun because his hat and outfit were really like frilly.
So like new money?
New money, I think more like a guy who thinks like a tacky person. Like he thinks that this looks
new
good.
Money.
I guess, but I don't think he's that rich. That's the problem. It's like a used car salesman wouldn't be super rich.
That's true. He'd just front like he was.
Yeah, that's right. It's a front.
Yeah.
So he's a bad guy, and now we weren't sure if he was working with Minius.
I spent this whole episode going, oh my gosh, obviously he's in league with the prince who's marrying Diana because that guy doesn't actually want to abolish slavery in his kingdom. I thought this whole plot was going to be like political intrigue to the max. And it probably was in some draft, but like the episode kind of drops the ball and forgets about that stuff by the end, which maybe is for the best because it's such a light episode. You kind of don't want to go back to a like heavy conversation about like the emancipation of the slaves.
Do you think it was because we would have a problem like allowing Diana to marry the brother of a guy who was like trying to technically assassinate her?
It would get pretty complicated. It's true.
So he was just like a typical dude who just wanted like a trophy wife and not love her legitimately like Philemon does. So he wasn't like trying to work with the slaves.
I love at the end of that fight when Xena is pretending to be Diana and she turns to Philemon and was like, you were very brave. And helps him with his nosebleed.
That's right. So
important.
Philemon starts figuring out that this is not Diana, and this was his first clue. But there were some other clues that were
even more stupid. I can understand a clue of, oh, she's really not freaking out even though I'm covered in blood. And in fact, she suddenly has some field medicine skills, which does not seems pretty at odds with being a princess. But then his second red flag is Diana can't catch.
Well, he throws an orange at her and she catches it like Dottie Hinson from A League of Their Own. Like straight up skills, of course, because she's Xena. And like that was literally the line. He's like, Diana can't catch.
Like how did this come out? Has he like tossed her stuff in the past? And she's like, oh no, I can't catch.
Yes. That is exactly what happened,
is catching something a anti-female?
That's a non-princess skill. I'm sure real Princess Diana couldn't catch oranges either. Like, there's just no princesses can catch fruit. That's not a thing.
I guess that was sort of being winked at later when Diana throws the chakram. And she doesn't catch it. It doesn't come back to her.
Now, that's a very special thing because only 3 people catch the chakram. Well, 4 people catch the chakram in the whole run of Xena, and it's very important, the people who can.
You can throw it, but you can't
throw
catch it.
Yeah, because only, like, Xena and people who maybe are, like, Xena Jr.
Again, deep.
Or, like,
it's sort
other
of like,
Arthurian
important. Legend, right? The Sword and the Stone. She who may catch the chakra may inherit the warrior princess mantle.
How did we get here?
Sorry, we took a turn.
But is the point being that when she did throw the chakram, I was like, oh, she's not going to catch it because it's very important, the people throughout the series who do catch it. So, like, we're not going to spoil it because it's really important. But it's one of them is coming up in season 1.
All right. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Should we talk about that sequence with Diana tossing the chakra?
Diana meets one of the little people and his family.
Well, wait, first she's like setting up camp with Gabrielle, and we find out that she like hates cheese, which is so strange. Like, who hates cheese?
Oh, I meant to look up what that delicacy is that she apparently is obsessed with, the knisses or something.
Yeah, it looks like a little munchkin from Dunkin' Donuts.
It probably is. Which, I mean, those are delicious. I get it, Diana.
We didn't also talk about her little dog.
Oh, Oh.
Yeah.
And Xena picks it up just like the baby from Hercules. She holds it like far away from her, like, what do I do with this thing?
Xena thought it was going to be something that she also was supposed to eat. And everybody was very confused because it was Diana's dog.
With the little bows in its ears.
Yeah, but Diana, of course, is too delicate to sleep on the ground.
Of course.
All sorts of stuff. Meanwhile, Gabrielle using stairs as a pillow, which looks like the most uncomfortable way to sleep. About like, how can that be better than just like straight up putting your head on the ground?
I thought it was interesting that Diana goes, I have some dinars. Let's go to an inn and eat. And Gabrielle did not take her up on that offer. We know Gabs loves a good meal from the inn.
I think when, like, Gabs only kind of indulges in that behavior when she has someone telling her no. Like, Diana's almost like a super Gabs in that she's completely, you know, innocent to the world, loves sleeping and money and food.
Yeah, of course.
and Gabs is like, well, I can't do that stuff now. I have to be the Xena.
Right.
Yes, immediately.
Right.
That's true. She took control of the situation. We also didn't mention how, because of her Marsha Brady hairbrushing love, Argo's tail looks amazing. Do you think she got the full 1,000 strokes?
She got to like 838, and I
Which
think
is
was
the same
forced to stop.
as when, you know, Xena made her hand servant stop her brushing her hair.
I know.
I can't believe she got that far.
It's true.
Xena's hair and Argo's hair are equally beautiful. This episode is what
Very
this week.
shiny, yeah.
Yeah, Xena didn't have a lot of patience for all the beauty rituals, which is funny because Xena's always perfectly made up and her hair always looks good.
So Diana meets the hungry villagers and she's like, that's impossible. There's no one going hungry in our kingdom.
And apparently she's right. Like it turns out that there's, you know, due to corruption, the aid they've been giving to the villagers has gone astray. And I was like, well, that's nice that this village literally has abolished hunger.
Yeah.
Yeah, when everything's working properly.
But it's not working properly.
It's not.
No.
Unfortunately, those governmental systems always work better in theory than in practice.
So she has to kind of entertain these poor villagers' children, and she tells these stories as Xena, and has to demonstrate the chakram, which she calls the round killing thing.
Round killing thing. And then Gabs calls it by its proper name. Chakra.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Good job, guys.
Yeah, and so she throws it, and it's like, no, don't do it, because like no one can catch it. It bounces like crazy and slices the top of the Burger King's hat.
The darker version of this episode, she would have killed all those starving children, especially that cute one.
Oh, no. But it's a comedy, so we can't have that.
Phew. Okay, we should talk about the big dinner scene where Xena is undercover as Diana, and it's her greatest test yet.
Where she has to play the harp.
She is asked to play the harp. She makes a toast. First, she stands up and says, "To the end of slavery." And everyone's like, okay, all right, yes. Very good. Thank you, Diana. That's very sweet for you to, like, pretend to be concerned with issues. And then she gets up and says, "To the end of corruption." And they cut to Bromius, or what's his name? Gauss?
Klaus. Yeah.
Charles Dance.
To Charles Dance in his evil hat, looking a little bit peeved.
He's like, yeah, to the end of corruption.
Yeah, we hate corruption. And then she sits down, and they're like, phew, she's done. And up she goes again, and she's like, death to traitors! In her Xena voice.
I guess that's 3 toasts, but
and yeah, it's great. It's wonderful because you kind of see how this could be, like, actually a princess thing, because she's, like, super, like, earnest and, like, kind of eager to have the spotlight. But it's actually Xena. So I feel like this was a good place where Xena could kind of like be the princess but be herself.
I mean, this is 4 different characters that Lucy Lawless got to play, which is basically like Xena, Diana, then Diana as Xena, and then Xena as Diana. And I always thought you could always tell, you know, when it's like Xena doing the Diana.
You can.
And it's so great.
We're almost getting to like sit down Tatiana Maslany territory.
Well, I mean, this was
we got to introduce a couple more.
Orphan Black. So.
Yeah.
And again, I can't help but see a sort of meta conversation here about Lucy Lawless, the actress, like playing Xena and kind of lowering her voice to embody this kind of warrior princess, and then you know, like doing kind of a much like amped girly voice to be a regular style princess, and like sort of the power of transformation that this one woman can be all these different kinds of women. So go Lucy.
What's left to talk about? I mean, the wedding.
Well, should we talk about the harp? We've
mentioned the harp. We're as in suspense about the answer to this. What happened?
We're left with the commercial break cliffhanger, right? Did anybody want it to be introduced as one of Xena's many skills?
I did.
She could actually play the harp.
Yes.
I think that would have been insane.
Have been surprised if she just rocked out on that harp.
Yeah.
But her idea worked, I think, and she just breaks all the strings. And Burger King is like, oh, the strings were tied too tight or whatever.
Yeah.
So that works too. But man, I think it would have been cool if she could. You'd be so surprised.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, she just plays the harp.
It's really important to sort of note that Xena allows kind of like the bad guy to hear, oh, everything's solved, that's fine, because the bad guy kind of set up this general as the fall guy for his plan. And then we later find out that this guy didn't really hang himself. He was murdered because there was no chair in his
I was
room.
quite shocked in this very sort of light, colorful, cute episode that then you just have like a man who's been hanged.
Right.
Like,
then there is murder in this episode.
It's well, I mean, Xena didn't do it.
Yeah, Xena didn't do it.
Yeah.
But it's a little graphic, and I love actually the kind of, you know, Agatha Christie solution to this mystery, which is there wasn't a chair in the room, so how could he have hung himself?
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was really very clever. Yeah, clever solution.
But the point being that the bad guy thinks that everything is A-okay and that Xena left and that Diana is back in the kingdom.
And about to get married.
Get married. And we're back to the beginning where everything's like how he wants it. He can go ahead and still try to kill Diana and slavery will be fine.
Slavery will be fine.
It will remain. Nothing will change. So we have this like, oh, did Xena really leave or did she stay? Did anybody question?
I didn't this viewing because I remembered.
The original. Did you believe that she
point.
leaves?
I
think I did.
believed it for a second.
I think I did. Because this is the point where the audience is supposed to think that everything is back to status quo.
I only pointed out because, again, this sort of happens in the next episode, too. So it's just interesting that the same kind of twist in the third act happens.
Same third act twist in both these episodes, and they both involve Xena wearing bridal costumes. So it's a really odd pairing.
Yeah. Let's discuss her bridal costume here. I mean, it's Diana's bridal costume, but what does Xena do to it?
She rips it basically to shreds until it almost resembles her warrior costume.
That's true.
See, it's interesting. I think it resembles what is typically envisioned as the Athena look. It's like a Grecian style kind of, you know.
What are her shoes doing?
Flowy.
Yeah, it's not like the actual Athena look from the show because that's crazy stuff.
That's like a metal bikini.
Yes, exactly. What were you saying?
I was just like interrupting 100 times to talk about her shoes because I feel like they looked really cool.
What do they look
as
like?
part of the outfit?
Let's hear it. You don't remember,
I think that's in the next episode.
No, this was part of her because she's firing off the arrows from the harp with her like
was
legs and her shoes in the air. And
but was it like the Greek style?
I think so. Yeah,
look?
they were like high. Yeah,
this is what I mean. This is what the look is.
Yeah.
So it's just really interesting that they gave her this look here. I think it's to resemble the Greek
We should definitely
style.
talk about how she uses the harp. It turns out Xena's many skills do allow her to play the harp.
Yeah,
she just
right.
doesn't play it the way most people play it.
exactly.
She fires off 4 arrows with it.
And I think kills 4 people.
She does not kill anybody. She instead captures Glaus.
Oh, you're right.
You know, one per like angle of his outfit, so he can't move away from the wall.
This is a very non-fatal episode.
This is where I'm like, previously, this character would just be super murdered by her. But here, she just catches him alive, because comedy.
Oh, I didn't get to make any like swinging from the chandelier jokes.
Oh!
That was it. Let's count it as that.
Yeah,
Well, the chandelier, which was going to be used as a murder weapon.
We should talk about Minius's reaction to Xena throughout the sequence, which is he's just so unhappy that he's marrying this woman who's is awesome and flying through the air on the chandelier
He was offended.
and kicking everybody's butt, and he keeps going like, "Oh, this is who I'm marrying." Oh.
She's not a girl.
Right. He calls her this woman.
Yeah.
You can hear the air quotes.
Woman. you know.
Princess.
Because, yeah, I mean, to him, like, he can't even describe her as a woman, which is awful. I just hated this guy.
Yeah. And again, like, I feel like this is the thesis statement of the episode. Like, there's many different ways to be a woman. Like, Xena's as much of a woman as Diana. Like, you don't have to wear a pink dress to be a woman.
Or a princess.
Yeah. Right. Many different ways to be a princess, even.
Yeah.
Not that
she
Xena
is one
is a
after all.
princess, but fine.
Excuse me?
Xena's not a princess.
Who says?
Xena, I'm sure if you asked her, she'd be like, I'm not a princess.
But I play one on TV.
Everybody around her calls her princess.
Yeah, it's true.
I like to think it's like there was like a Han Solo in her original like army who would be like, princess, in a like sarcastic way, and it just like stuck.
Interesting.
Oh, no.
That's my fanon.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I mean, listen, I want to go back to the discussion about how Minas is the worst and represents the worst kind of man who wants her to belong to him. And I loved Xena's line about Diana not belonging to anyone, which is true. Like,
And sounds a lot like the rhetoric for Helen in the Troy episode.
yes, exactly. So, yeah, because this was, about two different guys kind of wanting to possess her, whether it's for state or whether it's for loving her, which is what Philemon does at the end.
Yeah. So Diana gets to choose her own man, and she does it in, I thought, a very clever and sweet way, which is while she is pretending to be Xena, she's with Philemon, and she asks him about his true feelings for Diana. And he says that he can't tell her that he loves her because he knows she doesn't love him.
This felt very Shakespeare to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shakespeare.
And it was sweet.
Comedy.
Like, I was happy for this couple. I wanted them to be together.
That by pretending to be someone else, she's finally able to be herself.
Did this help Xena? Did she discover anything new about herself?
Her love of snacks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those eggs, man. She could get used to
Yeah.
that lifestyle, I guess.
It was probably good for Gabrielle. She got to kind of save Xena in a conflict. Probably really good for her confidence.
She liked her in that pink dress.
She did.
That one time.
She did.
And it has a nice little ending, too, with Gabrielle loving the love story in there and, saying that she hopes she finds someone that'll make her smile like that. And Xena's, you should speak up when you do. But, knowing you'll have no trouble doing that. She won't have any trouble doing that. We'll see later.
Even in the next episode. So let's move on. Alrighty, moving on to Mortal Beloved, written by RJ.
Clearly a play on Immortal Beloved.
Yes, this one's about Beethoven, too. I thought it was really interesting that the first line in it was, "Help me." We clearly recognize a shape that looks like Marcus in the nighttime.
Yes, it's a
moonlight.
creepy cold open.
Yeah, the cold open I thought was really
mild
interesting
X-Files vibes.
Yeah, it was one of the better ones, like more dramatic ones that we've seen in a while. But yeah, so this kind of shape without a face keeps saying "help me" to this random woman.
And she's freaking out. She
She's
thinks
freaking
it's a
out.
monster. So it's sort of interesting that you have this, character who's like, oh, God, save me from the thing. And it's actually a character we're familiar with and know is nothing to be feared. But
Did you recognize him at first?
No.
Like
That's
when we
true.
first watched it?
No.
Probably not.
Because the girl runs off into the tavern, right? Freaking out.
Yeah.
Because she just got crazy attacked by a bunch of shapes in the woods. And
They were polite.
They were, not attacked. But in her mind...
I think, Vera, if you were, out at night and you saw, a freaky shape, be like, help me.
Yeah, you would be
You'd
scared.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah, you would run into the tavern, and then you would scream, "A ghost! I saw a ghost!" And then Xena from behind would go, "Where?"
But not only that was just I just love her and Gabs hanging out at the bar.
Yeah.
They were just leaning on the bar together, hanging out. It was great.
It was awesome, and I just loved how calm she was, and just literally was like, "Where?"
Do you think it happens to her a lot? Do people often go I've seen a ghost? And she's like, all right, I'm a ghostbuster in my part-time, so I'll deal with it.
Maybe, but she finished her drink before she went to investigate, which I
One
thought was
sip
an
for
amazing. No, it was. She paid for that drink. She's gonna finish it.
It's funny because I am so used, like, I have almost this Pavlovian reaction when Xena starts drinking alcohol. I'm like, who's she gonna set on fire?
It's true.
And it was nobody this time.
But she does, in this episode, she does use that, but not in the bar.
Maybe she almost has, like, has, like, a little pouch in her mouth and, like, kept a little bit
like
on
a hamster.
hand. Yeah, to set someone on fire 3 hours later.
But the lady tells her where to go, so she goes to the woods, and I think she's skeptical, or is she? I don't know, but...
I just realized this is the beginning of Hamlet.
All right, I guess your comment trumps my comment, so why don't you go ahead and...
Somebody coming to her being like, whoa, someone... I just saw a thing. And she's like, what is it? Let me go see it. And it turns out to be someone from her past with a request.
Ooh,
that's Hamlet.
Okay.
But no vengeance and death.
And she does not hold, his skull or anything. But there is a helmet that's kind of skull-shaped.
Yeah, okay. All right. So we're claiming that Mortal Beloved is a really loose Hamlet adaptation.
Very loose.
Like, extremely loose.
But she sees Marcus' ghost. Marcus' ghost kind of sizzles when she touches
He's like
him.
glitching, and she recognizes him, and he has my favorite line in the whole episode in this first scene where, he's trying to explain to her the situation, and he goes, "I'm a ghost, Xena."
It's a very get right down to business.
He tells her the plot that something's gone wrong with the underworld.
Yeah.
Everything's topsy-turvy. The good people are in hell, and the bad people are in heaven, and I'm here talking to you, Xena.
And she has to go down through this lake to get there and help out.
Yeah.
So the cold open ends with her jumping in.
The shots of her jumping in are really cool. There's like this shot sort of from the surface of the lake, so she's like leaping over you. It reminded me of like Olympics coverage, seeing this like athletic body through the air. Like it was very inspiring.
It was wonderful. Yeah. I couldn't help but just be distracted by her little booties.
What do they
Not
look
her
like?
booty, but her little booties.
What do they look like?
So her little outfit in this episode was really funny to me. So you claim, Katie, that this is her bathing suit.
Yeah.
It's 100% her bathing costume.
Yes, it is. You're right.
And in that respect,
she only wears it for swimming.
Yeah, and in that respect, I think it is very, it's a pretty demure bathing costume. It's, very, early 1900s. Except leather, which is not something for the water.
This is where I get confused, because her looks are that white kind of ship that's underneath everything. Then there's the look of just the black leather outfit that she sleeps in, and so that's what happens when she takes the breastplate off and everything like that.
But this is not that.
That's what I thought this was originally.
I'm pretty sure it's not.
It's not. It's a completely different, it's a very thought out costume that the costume designer was like, I'm doing a little bathing suit for Xena. This is what it must look like. And gave her these little booties. That's so funny. And it's super short. This is the shortest ever thing
because it's a
that
bathing
she wears.
suit.
Yeah, it's true. But it is designed to have a little skirt, so hence, I don't know. It was just very distracting in a funny way to me.
Lucy Lawless loves this costume.
Oh no!
She has a quote in the official guide to the Xenoverse where she says she loved that she got out of the blasted corset. So if you have questions about the construction of this bathing costume, no corset.
Oh, great. I mean, a bathing suit should not have a corset.
That's a bad idea.
But Lucy Lawless also famously does not like how short, or did not like how short the skirt was on Xena.
I think that's very reasonable. It's absurd. This is a costume that Xena has made for herself. She should feel good and comfortable and awesome in it. Yeah. So I think that just the absurd shortness of that skirt was getting to a point where it didn't even seem functional. She's
was
kicking
at least
people.
Unrestrictive.
Yeah, she can kick and stuff.
Pants would
but
be
she can't
similar.
sit on the ground, which is the thing that she loves to do.
If we're talking about this situation in terms of kicking in skirts in the 90s, I always had an issue with Buffy would wear pencil skirts and stuff sometimes that I feel she could not fucking kick in.
Well, didn't she always rip them?
Yeah, she would rip them, and it's just so So in this respect, if she wants to wear a skirt versus pants, I guess the shorter the better.
It's true. I mean, she definitely is free to do high kicks, which she does in this one, many crazy high kicks, like against the harpies and stuff later.
Yeah, those are, yeah. I really love the way that is shot. I don't exactly love the way it looks, but I think the actual stunt with Xena, or her stunt double, like, it's just really awesome because you can really see those kicks and they have so much power in them. Yeah.
By the way, I mean, you just mentioned stunt double, but so far, I think it's been pretty great. Like, really, you don't really notice, another person. You mentioned Buffy. Buffy famously had some very visible stunt doubles throughout the early seasons of the show.
Yeah. No, and early, on Xena is very not noticeable.
I think it's funny because only later is it really noticeable because we know what Zoe Bell looks like. Yeah. So hence,
and it always makes me very happy. It's nothing. I'm not as familiar with the early stunt doubles for Xena, but Zoe Bell has clearly achieved a level of fame. So whenever I see her, I get really excited. So I don't even care that I can see her face. It's like, hey Zoe, like it's fun.
So going back to her diving into the lake, it was a really dramatic cut to credits. This was the episode that you mentioned that you noticed with the commercial break.
Yeah, cliffhangers. Yeah. Really dramatic, like almost every time.
So, there are 6 acts in a typical episode of television, and I think this episode of television has 5 cliffhangers, therefore, which is quite a lot. Yeah, it feels like an episode where every 6 minutes something really bad happens.
Yeah, and I thought it was really dramatic. Like, I loved how she emerges, she goes down this lake.
The lake is a big Greek mythology thing. And I think there was a note on Whoosh that they say it wrong, or at least had it wrong.
They spelled it wrong.
Yeah, or whatever. But it's like the Alcyonian Lake or some such, which is a portal to Hades. And like either like the deepest lake of all times or like no bottom whatsoever, which is why it's number one hilarious. They can just go to this lake and Xena knows where it is and how to get there. And then, Gabrielle is reasonably very concerned about Xena's plan here.
And Xena describes it to her like so blasé. She's like, I'll make it to the underworld one way or the other, meaning either I'll swim there or I'll drown and like report there as I'm supposed to. And Gabrielle says, that's not funny. And it isn't funny. It's, I think, a moment where you really feel like, the supreme unfairness of Gabrielle, which is she can't help Xena and she's just stranded. And for all she knows, Xena is actually dead.
I think that's my favorite element of the episode, where you just have Gabrielle abandoned by the lake and just waits for her while Xena's off doing her thing.
Let's talk about Gabrielle's role in this scene where she sits by the lake.
There's a mythological component to this, which is that she's playing the part of Alcyone, who is waiting for her love's return by the side of this lake.
I wanted to mention how this episode had some subtext in it, for sure, between Xena and Gabrielle, which is also interesting because this is an episode where Xena had sex with a man. So.
This is an aggressively hetero episode in that you have this huge swooning love affair. But then as a subplot, you have Gabrielle, who is waiting for her love to return. And you, I think, are more moved by, her patience and loyalty than anything that really goes on between Marcus and Xena.
So also, Gabrielle sitting by the lake was one of the funniest scenes where these 3 guys come and they're going to the festival. They're like the villagers. And they pass by her and the guy goes, are you going to the festival? And she's like, nope. And he goes, okay, bye. And it just keeps going.
Well, I felt bad because I was like, not only is Gabrielle like waiting here, like unable to do anything, but she can't even go party.
Yeah, she's just like, I thought the shot was composed really beautifully with her by the lake and kind of like poking at it with her stick.
That's my favorite.
Very still lake. Yeah. It was really beautiful.
Yeah.
Shout out to Garth Maxwell, the director.
Absolutely.
But also, continuing on with the look of this, going back to Xena just arriving in Hades, or in Tartarus, I suppose. I loved how she emerged from this, like, hot pink mist.
Oh, yeah.
Into, the area. There's, like, a lot of intense coloring in the lighting.
I have a note about that. My note is really feeling the Beetlejuice vibes.
Ooh! Including Sharon.
Yeah, Sharon is doing a full Beetlejuice impression to go with the kind of neon purple Beetlejuice colors. Yeah.
Yeah. Michael Hurst playing him, of course.
Sharon.
Yes, or Xena just calls him Sharon.
Mm-hmm. He's a chair you sit on.
Does.
Sharon.
She does the emphasis on the last syllable.
She's like, hi, Sharon.
He's kind of doing like a New York thing.
He's a New York Sharon. I also love how Xena, throughout the episode, enters his boat. Now, it's not just like a one leg over the other. It's a full-on jump over the side, like in an awesome kind of masculine way, I would say. She does it twice, and I thought it was really cool.
Oh,
not just, once it was like, an accident.
Especially because this is a boat taking her to the land of the dead. That feels very in character, that she's all in. She's just like, all right.
But even like when she goes with Marcus enters it or exits it normal. She just does this really cool move.
What do we think about Sharon's line that Xena will eventually be back under different circumstances? That was rough.
Yeah. I mean, but then you kind of made it okay by saying, well, she does throughout all the different episodes.
I mean, Xena dies about 18 different times. I mean, if you want to even count this as her dying, obviously this is a mythic trope, having a living character kind of descend into the underworld and then return safely. It's there in Dante. It's Aegeus. Like, he does that too. But Xena almost becomes overconfident and goes from this to much more extreme versions of actually dying and returning. I guess maybe as, Christ becomes more of a force within the story, you return to the underworld, like, by actually dying.
Mm-hmm. Then you get different conceptions of the underworld. So, like, right now we're explicitly dealing with Tartarus.
Greek underworld.
Yeah.
And the Elysian Fields.
Yes.
Yeah.
Two different versions of the underworld that are visualized very differently.
Yes.
Well, it made sense to me. I mean, it is basically the Greek heaven and hell. So you have the really gross kind of Tartarus part.
Beetlejuice land.
Yeah, where all the wicked go.
And you walk back and forth pacing, confused. Especially if you're supposed to be in the Elysian Fields, which is what these people are.
I'm pretty sure that hell is an eternity of waiting online. So, like, for me, that was a pretty good. Like, I totally bought that.
I like
those guys who just have nothing to be doing and nowhere to go and are just, like, extras pacing, like, shiftlessly. Yeah. Like, that's it. That's hell.
I think in later episodes they also kind of evolve it to be just like you're trying to achieve something and you can never get it done.
Sisyphus,
you're right, but also some episodes with Callisto.
Yeah, don't spoil.
Cass. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's going to be a lot of different versions of the underworld depicted in Xena. And, I mean, in a way it's really, like, reassuring to me that, death is not the end. Like, even... Like, thinking about Marcus's previous appearance in The Path Not Taken, which was a really upsetting episode. He dies in a way that you were like, oh, why? Unfair. And it's, like, a really downer ending. And here, like, Xena just has to swim through a lake. And she can see him again. So it's kind of nice.
But that wasn't, she can't do that every day, right? No. This was a special circumstance that she was, asked for help, like...
I don't think Sharon would have taken her across the river if that helmet hadn't been stolen.
Right, because a lot of the times they were like, helmet. "Oh, you're alive." They could sense that she wasn't really dead.
Right.
I guess this is a perfect time to talk about the plot of the episode, which is this guy Adaminius stole Hades' helmet of invisibility and created this chaos. And they explain who this guy was. He has a crazy backstory.
Yeah, he seems to be like a boogeyman. Really, because Xena had been, told stories of him, right? And he, kills women before their weddings. Marcus is he chops them up into little pieces.
Do we think there's, a case of, expectations versus reality going on here? Because, when Xena told that story, I was like, oh, wow, this bad guy sounds really scary. And then you meet him, and he's just total comedy.
Yeah. He looks like Kevin Richardson, the Backstreet Boy.
So yeah, he's an evil Backstreet Boy who like cackles maniacally.
And hates jugglers.
But mimes even more.
Yes. So, I mean, he has his priorities.
I guess if you want to come up with maybe the number one fault of this episode, I think it's that its villain, while built up to be someone really disturbing, is actually completely comic relief.
Yeah, he's pretty funny.
A little bit,
Takes away the stakes.
I mean, his whole look, which was a very kind of theatrical makeup,
very much so,
on his face.
Yeah, everybody else is sort of like undead. Yeah. And he's dead. He has like sunken eyes and like pasty skin. He's like a zombie.
But everybody else is dead, though.
I mean, they're all dead. But like, obviously, Marcus
he looks hot.
Fine as hell.
Yeah, he lost weight.
Oh, we will talk about Marcus.
Woo!
So yeah, maybe we should go back to the run of scenes in the episode.
Well, I want to talk about how Xena meets Toxius here. Which was a character, from a previous episode that she's killed.
Death in Chains.
That's right. Is this the first time that we've had kind of like a character from a different episode appear?
Marcus?
Well, Marcus, yeah.
Right.
Well, it's also the same episode. So.
But I mean, like, this is a rando. Marcus is an important character from Xena's life, so hence it's okay that he comes back, or they find a way to bring him back. But I thought it was really cool that this was like a baddie that she killed in a previous episode, that he comes back,
And it's great because it's a baddie who she killed at the beginning of a previous episode and then came back in that episode. And now he's back again. Yeah. Like, you cannot keep this guy from appearing on Xena.
Yeah, and he still has that wound that, that's the mortal wound that she gave him, so.
Yeah, his reaction to seeing Xena in the Elysian Fields is great because he's just sort of like, I knew you'd end up here with us. Like, he doesn't really take it that personally that she killed him. He seems, if anything, kind of like, oh, hey.
Well, she told a story that she, nobody killed her, that she just fell off her horse. And he was like, oh, of course.
He loved it. Yeah. He loved that she didn't die nobly.
What did we think of the bad guys in the Elysian Fields and what they were doing?
It's great to be wicked and dead, says Toxius.
That's right.
But all they do is hit each other.
They are gluttonous in terms of food and drink. They like barf on each other and like drink a lot.
I did not notice
that was a
barf.
Scene for sure. A guy just like puked on another guy.
Oh no!
And so this is like Saturday night at 3 a.m.
Yes.
Is the Elysian Fields under the control of the baddies?
Yeah, and then they fight, and I guess they just do all the 7 deadly sins, I think, up there.
But we didn't see any orgy, just barfing. Apparently,
this is not a gritty HBO program, so you wouldn't see that, would you?
In this scene in the Elysian Fields, the truth comes out, which is that Marcus himself was damned to Tartarus.
Yeah, this is the heart of the episode, I think, and the big stuff that we need to talk about with Xena and Marcus's relationship.
I thought it was really interesting that you brought it up before, how he was put into Tartarus, as he says, a one good deed, like at the end, doesn't make up for a life of sin.
Mm-hmm.
Well, obviously, that feels very relevant to what Xena's going through right now, because obviously, like, in the scales of her life, she's done a lot of bad, and she's now trying to even the score by doing good deeds. But in a way, this episode kind of puts her quest in a new light, because it seems like she's damned if she does and damned if she doesn't. Yeah.
And I think this might be very specific to the mythology they're working in the episode. And then later, what's great about Xena is that they start introducing different mythologies and like different religions too, that we'll talk about later in terms of redemption. But like, their conversation here is just very relevant to Xena's entire quest for redemption and whether it's achievable or not.
Yeah. It actually makes me think of like the Egyptian conception of the underworld, where you do have the scales, where you put your heart on the scales and you see whether they can balance out. And yeah, it does feel very stacked against all of these characters, because, they embark on a life of sin and that's it. Even if they change their mind. And with Marcus especially, he's a character who we've spoken about, like, always kind of gave you the sense of a decent person who's kind of been, handed the short end of the stick and is like doing bad things because it's all he knows how to do. And you can tell that he knows that and could do a lot better. And his final acts prove that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's interesting how Xena says, you know, don't judge him by his acts, judge him by what's in his heart, and that those are two separate things.
Yeah, I think it's also important to note that one of the things he says to her in this scene is, I died doing a selfless act. I know you'd do the same in my place.
Would she?
Would she?
Well, I'm just going to say that season 1 is just so very crucial to season 6. That's all.
I mean, Xena in Prometheus was fighting with Hercules for the chance to die for the greater good. Mm-hmm. So I think you catch Xena at the right moment, and she's willing to do a selfless act. But you catch her in the wrong moment.
Maybe she's not.
You catch her at the wrong moment. She doesn't want to go undercover as a princess.
She doesn't want to give an orphan a wheel of cheese.
Yeah. Which makes her such a believable,
long time ago at this
amazing character. You know, like, this is what I love about this show. And most of the characters that they present, which is they are not perfect. They're not like Hercules, you know, who's perfect.
Yeah. And even
perfect is boring.
Yeah, perfect is boring.
Perfect is boring because you always know what a perfect person will do under any circumstances.
Which is the right thing.
Xena and also Marcus in this episode are very vulnerable to temptation.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are willing to do selfish acts because they, you know, that's what human nature is like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Should we talk about the harpies?
Yeah, we should talk about the harpies. So, yeah. Computer effects from 1995.
Amazing computer effects. It reminded me of the CD-ROM games you used to get, like on your, you know, the first computer in your house.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, 1995 was like that Myst times, because this looked way worse than Myst.
Oh, shit. I mean, the harpies themselves, I think I would have been okay with.
Like Diablo, this like looked worse than Diablo.
That hit a nerve.
Just remembered that.
Them's fighting words. We are introduced to Hades' castle, and a lot of this has to do with like that effect, because we're not obviously at a real underworld castle set. On the outside.
Or even a model, a miniature of a castle set. It's just a computer-generated texture.
Yeah.
And it looks like one.
It looked very...
It's so flat.
It looked very CD-ROM. That's what it looked like to me. But the harpies attacked, and they strategically took off Marcus's vest. I thought that was great.
Yes, and this is one of those moments that's very clearly on purpose.
For the ladies?
Yeah.
He's very oiled up underneath that vest.
Oh,
yeah.
There's no reason for him to lose his vest like that other than that it's for looking at.
But
it really isn't.
Has Xena found its true audience yet? Because they'd be like, we're not interested in that.
Well, I think Xena's audience is an equal opportunity nudity audience.
I think one of the great things about Xena is that you can get into very complicated discussions about the camera and its gaze.
Yeah.
Very complicated.
Its gaze.
And its gaze. Yes.
This is going to be an ongoing joke about the camera gaze.
The female gaze and the male gaze.
Yes, which is something we could even talk about with Lucy Lawless's, bathing suit and her short skirts,
thighs.
Which is it's just one of those things. And I think that's one of the most interesting things about the show, to be perfectly honest.
Is the gaze.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just to be clear, the gaze.
Yes.
Okay.
With a Z.
Not with a YS?
And that. Yes.
Excellent.
Just because of the world that it explicitly is creating, some of the stuff that is sometimes you would look at as an issue with women being to be looked at and whatever, it becomes a different thing. And sometimes I think it's not as threatening in this show because of the world that it has set up.
Well, I mean, we were talking about Xena's costume, and her costume is to be looked at.
Right.
That's why it looks like
I am looking at it.
I mean, I'm not complaining.
But at the same time, I cited, Olympics coverage, which is not really objectifying, those bodies. It's celebrating the effort that sculpts them and like the power of those muscles. Mm-hmm. And I think that's very much at work too in the camera work with Xena. You're looking at these, unclothed women being like, they're awesome. Like they're ripped.
Well, that's Gabrielle and her outfits.
We're not there yet. Don't get too far.
We're getting there a a little bit. I noticed that in this particular episode, like, it's a very midriff-bearing version of Gabrielle's
this is
costume.
the, like, we're one step away.
It's coming.
So Xena has this funny line to Marcus once he's unclothed, where she's, like, compliments him because he lost some weight while being dead, which I have so many questions about the metaphysical process that allows one to lose weight when you don't even have a physical body.
Yeah.
Well, that's maybe stuff that classics people need to help us out with, because it is much more of a different conception, I think.
You do have a body in the Elysian Fields, because they're fighting, they're fucking, they're drinking.
You can get your head cut off like poor Toxius.
Yeah, and then you have to spend your life as a disembodied head.
Right.
That's true, yeah. To me, that was like one of those comments where you see an actor one episode, and the next time you see them, they're like either ripped or like have a new haircut, so you have to like make sure to comment on that. So I didn't really notice any physical difference between Marcus and the 2 episodes that, he was in. So I didn't see that he lost weight, nor he was the same to me.
I'm pretty sure Bobby Hosea looked exactly the same.
Yeah, so I thought that was just like a weird line, because I'm like, why are you saying that, Xena? He looked good, that's all.
He does look good.
All that matters.
He's great. I do really enjoy this actor, and I can totally see why they created this episode to bring him back, because I think he and Lucy Lawless have a really nice rapport. I'm not sure I would quite call it chemistry. I kind of cringe a little bit when they make out.
What?
It's just so enthused. Maybe that is what you would call good chemistry, but I was kind of like, you don't need to see it.
Really? Oh, I think...
Guys, maybe this will be cut out later, but I think it's just Lucy Lawless's kissing style that is very the same in any time she does any makeout.
She's got a sloppy
enthusiastic kisser.
It's a little sloppy.
All right,
you want to cut it out.
I am not going to cut that out.
Why would we cut?
I never had these thoughts.
Lucy Lawless
they have great chemistry.
I agree. I think they have great chemistry. And I think it's obvious that they would bring back, and hopefully they would bring back any character that is important to your main characters.
I also think this episode kind of reveals a certain amount of anxiety about how Path Not Taken ended. I can see why Xena, the character, would blame herself for what happened to Marcus. And it's kind of nice that now you have an episode where Marcus comes back to tell her, that's not your fault.
Yeah.
Like, I chose that. And look, like... you're getting the chance to, like, prove why I deserve to be in the Elysian Fields and, actually kind of making that final argument that a person who's done a lot of bad things can still be a good person, which is obviously integral to the entire show.
Well, let's move this into the next phase for Marcus, where they go to Hades' palace. The point is that Adaminius stole the helmet, and Xena and Marcus convince Hades to give him mortality for 48 hours. This is where I should point out Hades, the one who I prefer, looked like straight up 90s Skeet Ulrich.
He's got that floppy hair.
Like out of Scream, like straight up. But I loved his outfit, by the way.
He's super emo.
Yeah, he was really upset. I mean, his helmet is gone. Like, he's just like super upset about that.
Yeah, let's talk about that outfit.
It's just red velvet. So Marcus becomes mortal for 48 hours. And they're sent back to, Earth to find Adaminius, who's wreaking havoc on all the jugglers at the festival.
Well, not yet. First, he has a really upsetting, I call it straight up horror sequence, where he stalks Gabrielle while first being invisible and then not being invisible.
Yeah, because the first thing you see when you come out of that lake is Gabrielle, who's just sitting there very loyally. It is gross because he's like technically a gross guy who's like, he goes literally to her like, you're not about to get married, are you? Because that's my thing, cutting up brides.
Yeah, the implication is that he does bad sexual stuff
he's an icky guy.
To brides, to virgins. So Gabrielle is sort of classed in there with those brides.
Yeah, and so we're left in suspense. And I think this was another commercial break where Xena and Marcus come out of the lake and she's there passed out.
And he's got blood smeared all over
his face. Like he just ate her. Like he just took a bite out of her or something.
Really disturbing.
Fade to black.
Yeah.
But then it turns out that she gave him a nosebleed.
Yeah.
Right. Xena and Marcus run up to her. She was unconscious. She comes back and she's like, did you see the nosebleed I gave him? Then he kicked me in the head. The next thing I saw was you. which is a very pleasant sight.
Yes, and she keeps like touching her leg.
Yeah, it's great.
So that's a bit of the female gaze, would you say?
The female gaze with a YS. Yes, of course. I guess we should talk about Xena and Marcus and that nighttime.
I actually really love that scene. I loved, I mean, obviously the sexy stuff was great, but, you know, the moment where they're looking at the sky and Marcus says something like, you know, we don't have skies like that in Tartarus. And it's really moving, and you have, you know, beautiful photography of the actual New Zealand nighttime sky and birds flying across the moon. And it almost had this poetic quality. It was quite nice.
I'm pretty sure their nighttime campfire sets are a set in the studio.
The shot of the sky was a real
good B-roll.
A real sky.
Can I say something really profoundly stupid?
Yes.
No.
That's not this whole podcast?
Always thought that they were actually outside.
Yeah.
And that just speaks highly of their campfire studio sets. And obviously they would be a set. But it just never dawned on me until I heard Liz Friedman talking about it. That I was like, oh yeah, this would be in the studio. They're not filming in the middle of the night all the time.
They do a really good job, I think, of finding locations that match those campfire sets. And, you know, like, New Zealand has such a lush vegetation. Like, I think they do a good job of replicating that in their set.
I think we're trained by all the shows that are set in the woods of Vancouver. That we just assume anytime that you're in a woods setting that you're, like, in the woods for whichever location you're at.
Can't wait for the Xena reboot to be in
go there, yes.
Vancouver woods.
The woods of Vancouver.
Oh, that'll be honestly, that almost makes me more sad than recasting the actors to not set it in New Zealand.
Well, you don't know.
I don't know. I'm making that up. It's my assumption that if that got off the ground, that it would be in Vancouver. And
we're only assuming that because, you know, the 100 is set there, but
every other show ever.
Well, if Rob Tabert's company is involved,
that's true. It could be in New Zealand.
That would be in New Zealand.
Back in New Zealand.
Yeah,
so that's fine.
They film everything there.
So that was a little tangent, but going back, I love the ongoing gag about Gabrielle sleeping deeply, where she's like, I'm not going to sleep, you know, a wink tonight, and then cut to snoring, and I loved how Xena tucked her in a little bit with
She
the
tucked her
blanket.
in.
She really tucked her in, but
she had a long day.
She did have
a rough day, she says.
Yeah. But then she went, you know, the sexy stuff with Marcus.
Yeah.
Marcus
but they have a very poignant
don't
conversation.
give up on love. He heard her.
Oh, yeah, this is the introduction of the thoughts. We should talk about this. This is very important.
The introduction of the concept that the dead can hear the living's thoughts whenever they think of them or things like that.
Which is a beautiful kind of thought process.
Very nice.
So not only does Marcus hear it when Xena thinks about him and blames herself for his death, but he also hears when Xena thinks maybe I should just give up on love entirely.
Yeah.
Which clearly, would have a lot of Marcus bundled up into it because of her guilt over his death. But
he tells her it's the strongest power in the universe.
She tells him that she loves him, which is the magic words for a sex scene to happen.
Right.
Have we heard Xena say I love you before? Not to Hercules?
Hercules said it to her.
Yeah. And she was like, that's nice.
The magic words, and then they're, you know, that to okay their sex scene from previous.
Right.
So I think that's really important on this show.
This is a very 20 years ago, I think, kind of thing that it had to be established that they were very much in love.
There's no hookups.
To continue, having sex. Yeah.
So meanwhile, we have Adaminius, who is going to this festival and menacing it while wearing the helmet and being invisible and totally ruining this juggler's day.
Oh my god, yeah.
By stealing his potato?
I don't know what he was juggling with, but like this guy just, I mean, has a vendetta against jugglers. Yeah, and he, you know, threw the food table down, there goes that wheel of cheese, and then he like menaced the bride and groom.
And this is why I say that this episode suffers from a villain who isn't actually that terrifying, because we expect him to really be doing horrifying things to this festival. And meanwhile, he's kind of just hazing it.
Yeah, and they love to do that little thing where, you know, you see his little footprints going around because he's invisible.
Fun. Yeah, I mean, you know, the invisibility effects are pretty entertaining, especially with the juggler. So Xena and Gabrielle and Marcus enter this village, and we have a big scene where Xena tells the leader of the village, hide your bride, let her sleep, and I'll take her place.
Yeah.
Which is so funny because we've just done this in Warrior Princess, where Xena takes the place of a bride.
Yes, it's fresh in your brain as an idea.
I think Xena is just now a wedding addict. She just wants to wear a wedding dress. She's like, oh, before they've even explained what's going on here, she's like, I know it would help if I wear a wedding dress.
In her spare time, she likes to watch 4 weddings.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. She's like a bridezilla who doesn't actually want to get married. They kill Adaminius. How did they kill him? I don't even remember.
She puts the sheet over him, which I was like, it's from It Follows.
Right, it follows him. She throws a sheet over him
and then kills him.
And then kills him.
So they get the helmet, and this is where I thought was really interesting, because Marcus is really tempted by keeping it and just staying alive.
Yeah, that's a big moment. I mean, this whole episode has been kind of peddling the Marcus is a really great guy and Xena misses him and they're true loves. And then as soon as Marcus gets a powerful object, he's like, wait a minute, I could do exactly what Adaminius is doing.
Well, he wasn't going to menace jugglers. It's more like he...
But it would be okay if he wanted to. Jeez. Who doesn't want to menace jugglers?
He just wanted to stay alive, which is, this is
and
how he would
Xena.
do it. Yeah, exactly. So, presumably he would continue to do good with her, by her side. So I just thought it was interesting that he was just straight up tempted, that they included the scene, because it's so easy to be like, well, this is the guy that Xena's with, and he's just immediately going to be perfect like her, or not even like her, but just perfect, just to be like, no temptation, and got the helmet, let's go bring it back.
Do you think this is a bit like a former drug addict, getting with a former drug addict, and that being a little bit of a warning sign, because relapsing is going to be that much more juicy for both of them? They both have this history of violence and being warlords, and with them both together, it kind of weakens their mutual resolve to be good.
Yeah, I mean, we've previously discussed dropping warlordism as a drug metaphor or an alcohol metaphor.
And absolutely was in the Marcus episode.
We talked about
it as a 12-step plan.
Yeah, this was for sure that. I mean, the helmet was I don't know if you could continue the analogy.
It was a hit.
Yeah, it was them. They need to return these bottle of alcohol or this drug somewhere, and he's like, well, what if we keep it? So. I thought it was a really good thing that they kept that in.
But she talks him down from that moment. He's willing to go back to Hades with the helmet. Because
they do the right thing, you know? So that's really good. And that was a super dramatic moment where they do return the helmet to Hades.
Mm-hmm.
She stabbed the shit out of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where she's talking to Hades and you don't know Marcus is there because he has the helmet on.
She makes Hades put him in the Elysian Fields.
Right.
That's the reward, which is great. I do think that this was a clever way of doing that.
Marcus earned it.
Yeah, he did earn it.
The way he proved he earned it is that this final temptation of the helmet, he rejected it. Yeah. So that's Xena's argument. It's look, he brought it back. He deserves to be in the land of the heroes.
Yeah, because you're judged when you die, and he was judged already. But he died twice, so this is the second time, and he will be put into the Elysian Fields, which is great. But dang, they do it so dramatically. Are his 48 hours even up?
No, they're not up.
They're not even
up. He
probably
has 12 hours left.
Yeah,
they could have waited.
Yeah, exactly. They could have waited until 1 minute left, and no, they go early, and they have their final kiss. And Xena just stabs him in the heart, and it's just super intense.
So why do we think Xena does that? What is the symbolic meaning of that?
What is the symbolic meaning of that?
I feel like it's her kind of saying, we're not tempted. We're not going to live out our lives together with the helmet. It's kind of that final severing of temptation.
I think he wanted her to do it. I think if anybody was to kill him again, it would be her. It's a love thing.
It's penetration.
Okay, great.
Oh, boy. Are we going to go through this whole podcast without talking about Hades' house coat?
We sort of mentioned it. Red velvet.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It's beautiful. I loved
good.
it.
I'm glad,
do love Hades 1.
My note was here at the end, so that's when I noticed it. While Xena was stabbing Marcus. I was like, look at that man's go.
Yeah, you were clearly paying attention to the right things in that scene.
No, I mean, we did kind of go through 2 episodes of Marcus without talking about the Xena-Marcus interracial relationship.
Yeah, which I think is a great point for the 90s, that, like, obviously it's not the first interracial relationship on TV or in movies, but just the fact that it's not mentioned, it's not like a point. Obviously the show is set in some kind of vague antiquity year, but that just is great for representation, and that it's just not something that is part of the plot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I mean, ancient Greece in Xenoland is full of different races, and it just feels like this cosmopolitan place where you have different people from different places, and why remark on it? It's just a fact of life.
Yeah, it's just funny, kind of, if you're watching it for the first time now, like, I feel like you wouldn't even bat an eye to this, nor would you to Xena and Gabrielle's relationship, but, like, it's such a big deal in the 90s. So I guess we applaud the show for going there.
Not only that, but, you know, Xena's first kind of on-screen romance was with Draco, portrayed by a Samoan actor. So, like, you know, the show is clearly laying down that Xena is someone who, doesn't really, like, distinguish between races.
Yeah, I think that's part of the thing where, like, context and when you're viewing stuff is important, because you're always watching stuff with the filter of, like, we're watching this in 2016. The show was made in the 90s, so, like, Vera, you mentioned with Xena and Gabrielle, just the idea that the show got away with so much of what it did do is amazing. And I always get worried that people watching it now will not understand the context of watching it in the 90s and think that it is, like, queer baiting, which, I mean, you can have all kinds of arguments about stuff that they do sometimes, but, like, you know, the production of the show was, like, 100% on board with this relationship, and they get all this pushback from the network, right? So you have to always consider the context of when a show is being produced when you're thinking about these things. So I think that her having this relationship with Marcus and it just being, like, a non-comment upon thing is pretty awesome.
And that it's a sweeping romance. It's really just romantic with a capital R. They're a wonderful couple. And, you know, the fact that it kind of crosses these borders of life and death just kind of adds to the swooning nature.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then again, this is episode 16, and we had yet another Gabrielle love for Xena hint in this one too. So
so you have an interracial couple and a gay couple kind of existing simultaneously.
Yeah, and because we had said earlier, the whole thing with Gabrielle just, you know, waiting for her, being in that, like, mythological, like, wifely waiting role or whatever, you know, it's very romantic, her just sitting there. Like, those shots are the most poignant ones to me in the whole episode of Gabrielle just...
Yeah, because they're so different.
Silently waiting.
And I love when Xena comes back that second time, you know, gasping, really, like, out of breath. And she has, like, the seaweed stuck to her.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Like, you know, they really sell it. She's been at the bottom of that lake. And, like... Gabrielle, like, runs in to help her out, and it's this really sweet moment where Xena is, like, wet and soggy and bedraggled and sitting there at the on the shores of this lake with Gabrielle, and Gabrielle's reassuring her about Marcus, and it's a very sweet moment. And I think Xena is great at these moments where, like, you know, you kind of have almost like 3-way romantic tension. So Xena's feeling upset about one romance and seeking solace by having a moment with Gabrielle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very good.
So we like these.
Yeah.
These were good.
These were good. I'll say that Mortal Beloved, I liked it better when I first saw it than I did the second time. I think it suffers a bit, like, during a rewatch. I can't exactly say why. Maybe a lot of it is due to the villain's lack of threat level, which we talked about. But also, I think maybe The Path Not Taken was such a powerful episode and such a dark episode that I resented this episode a little bit for kind of softening the blow. like kind of trying to remove some of the guilt that Xena feels about Marcus's death. I was like, that was a good episode. That was like a hard episode that really like was tough on Xena. And I don't really like when TV tries to soften tough moments for its characters, because I'm like, let it be tough, let it be hard.
Yeah.
Don't come back later and be like, don't feel bad.
Yeah, it wasn't your fault. Yeah.
Xena does let a lot of episodes kind of be hard, which is great.
It does, and even this episode, which is mostly kind of a feel-good episode, I think the moment that you kind of remember from this is the moment where she stabs Marcus in the chest. It's like, it's shocking. It stops the whole episode in its tracks. It's weirdly violent in an otherwise very sweet romantic relationship. So even though this episode to me was kind of a bit of a Band-Aid over Path Not Taken, it's a Band-Aid with this lingering question of like, you know, how much, you know, blame should Xena take for everything that's happened between her and Marcus? And, like, what is the connection between her and Marcus? Like, are they kind of, you know, these two violent people who have violence in common? Or is their love stronger than that?
Good stuff. Very juicy. Did we have anything else to say about these episodes? We're covered. We got it all.
I think we got it.
Yes? Oh, wait. Oh. We forgot to talk about how Xena did her little Han Solo.
I love you, I know.
No, she said she's got a bad feeling about this. It was the second time her and Marcus are in the CGI hell place, and she saves him from falling over the side.
I also wanted to say that when Sharon says, keep your hands inside the boat, I was like, oh no, now he's Willy Wonka.
Oh yeah, he was like doing like the tour guide stuff of all the realms of Tartarus.
They couldn't figure out what pop culture character Sharon was meant to resemble. So he's like part Willy Wonka, part Beetlejuice. It's just like a lot of sampling.
So before we sign off, I wanted to quickly say, please rate us, and if you are so kind, write a review on iTunes. It really helps us out. And we are very grateful to anyone who has done that already. So thank you very much. Now Katie can do the final beats.
Oh,
which
yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people just turn off already. So.
Yeah, no, but follow us on Twitter at Xena Warrior Pod. We're also on Tumblr, Xena Warrior Podcast. Vera already mentioned. You can subscribe on iTunes, rate, leave a review. Yeah, keep talking to us in these places. I think, you know, we have lots to say here, but we'd love to talk to you all more about your Xena thoughts and feelings. So please come find us on any of those places.
The power.
The passion.
The podcast.